Welcome to another exciting episode of Strange Tales Weekly. I'm your host, Jess, and joining me as always is my co-host, Eric.
Hey.
And Joe.
Hey.
And this week's special guest is Ben Vonderheide. Why don't you introduce yourself to us, Ben?
Good evening, and thanks for having me on the show. Very exciting. I'm confident that you are the first source for your listeners and viewers of any information. It'll be the first time they're able to connect to the powerful Nomoli ancient artifacts, the carved figurines. And I'm confident it'll be the first time they will hear of the deities which inspired the stones.
Awesome.
Talk a little bit about yourself and how you got started with this.
Well, I've been a businessman all my life. I'm an American businessman, typical, started young and I built a number of businesses over my life. And along the way, I have had a couple unique experiences. And along those lines, a couple of times, there were attempts to recruit me into the intelligence community. One of which, and I did not take those offers. It just wasn't my bailiwick, if you will. My heart wouldn't have been in it. But one of those individuals who approached me was a gentleman by the name of Bill Diamonds. And Bill Diamonds would have been the true-to-life character that was portrayed in the movie Blood Diamonds by Leonardo DiCaprio. Long ago, Bill was that character who went, and when he found out the best diamonds in the world were in Sierra Leone, West Africa, where that movie took place. He went and dropped in deep in the bush, found a guide, and entered into no man's land and came out some months later with diamonds and friends. And he continued that for many years and also operated as an intelligence operative for the United States intelligence community. And Bill, again, had invited me to be involved with the diamond business and the intelligence business, neither of which I had an attraction to. But while he was in the bush, he was acquiring some interesting artifacts, and those piqued my interest. And so I began to acquire a variety, some wooden masks, wooden figurines, but the stones really sparked my interest further and were really just powerful. And so I began to collect the stones in a vacuum, if you will, many years ago. And that's led me to this point.
So, Ben, can you tell us a little bit about the stones themselves?
Yes, the stones are found only in 3 countries in the world, in Sierra Leone, in Liberia, and in Guinea. And unlike other stones, they are carved figurines. Unlike other stones that are primarily found in burial sites and in temples, these are not. They're found randomly in the jungle, in the bush, if you will. They're found when farmers clear areas for farming, when diamond mining operations occur, and they are found independently in the midst of the ground, randomly again, buried in various depths. So they're carved, and they are, Nomoli is the primary name. There are other names which are attributed by the various tribes. They are representative of the Nomoli deities, which the natives would say came long ago. And that when they were, prior to coming to Earth, they were spirits, angels, if you will, gods who lived in the sky. And when they misbehaved, they were forced to come to Earth. And when they came to Earth, they were identified as men in stone, much like if you were to envision Iron Man came down to the jungle long ago. And their voices were very large. Their voices were so loud that they would speak in one village and be heard in another village. Their eyes were so powerful you could not look into them. And these deities lived amongst the natives and blessed them with various blessings. And amongst those blessings are said to be the Nomoli stones, which were, according to the tribal beliefs, not carved by humans, but were gifted by the Nomoli gods.
Are these stories that are told today, or are these stories that were written that you see?
Well, this is interesting. The most interesting thing I found about Nomoli, as I said, I began to collect them in a vacuum and did for many years. And some time ago, maybe 6 years or so, I came out and I decided to find out more about them and identify others who collected them. And I came to find, and especially it was demonstrated and proven by my son over the last couple of years, where he did an outreach into the internet, into social media, specifically focusing on those who would know about these type of things, those into crystal skulls, crystal healing, metaphysical and paranormal, those into ancient civilization and ancient alien theories. And what he found universally was that no one had heard of Nomoli. In fact, I would venture to guess that the three of you, being very well advanced, most, have never heard of Nomoli prior to us providing them. Now, that's not accidental. They have been purposely suppressed and obscured. But we looked and we found that no one knew of these stones. So, and then I reached out to those who I thought would be interested, and there was a limited interest. You begin to wonder, are they real? Or is this another fake that was created by somebody, such as people believe the Ica stones have been, and others that suddenly appeared? But in answer to your original question, no, they were first identified by Portuguese sailors in the 1400s when they hit West Africa. They were first written about by Thompson on Africa in 1855. And then again in the 1890s, a couple of mentioned. There were 4 pages written in a book in 1917, which was very interesting, by Walter Edwin. So again, there's this whole history of knowledge of them. In fact, as far as 1855, it's mentioned that within 4 years, Thompson had collected a collection of 10 Nomoli. So they were already revered and collected back in the 1850s. So the fact that they're unknown is quite amazing. We move forward to 1955, and Thor Heyerdahl, I'm confident you would know of the Kon-Tiki, and your listeners and viewers would know of the Kon-Tiki and Thor Heyerdahl. In addition to that, which is a great story about the ancients using the ocean as thoroughfares instead of viewing them as a hindrance. In 1955, Thor led the first expedition to Easter Island. I'm confident, again, all your listeners and viewers are aware of the large stones on Easter Island, but they may not be aware, because few people are aware, that there were small figurines that were in secret caves and were handed from family and down ancestrally, and were protected and hidden. And Thor Heyerdahl identified that they were the closest they resembled to any other stones he saw were Nomoli. So Thor Heyerdahl also had been exposed to Nomoli. We forward to 1990, and we see for the first time ever, and the last time that we can see, a television program, Unexplained Mysteries, that did touch on the Nomoli stones. So the answer to the question is that it's an anomaly, if you'll excuse the pun, wherein that they're completely unknown by current, those who are really the aficionados and the adepts. But they are proven to be real and have been known, and at times were very popular. In 1925 and 26, the British imperialist show, if you will, they had representation of all the countries that they had colonized, and 50, I think, some out of Africa. And Sierra Leone handed out little 1-inch Nomolis as souvenirs. So they were known back then. The British royalty have collected them, long collected them. They are in the museums, such as the Bronx Museum and other places like that. So again, it's interesting dynamics of how they are so unknown, but at the same point in time, known in the past.
How many have you collected over time?
Dozens, but not hundreds. There are many fakes out there. They have been faked for many years also.
What were some of the oldest ones found?
The ones that have been dated, on that TV show, there was a gentleman by the name Angelo Pittoni. And Angelo was responsible for excavation of diamonds in West Africa. And in 1990, he uncovered a stone that was in strata. His uncovered stones in strata as deep as 145 feet deep. And he carbon dated strata where Nomoli were found to be 17,000 years old. Now, in that was a very interesting piece that he found. It resembled a dragon, if you will, and he kept that at his home, and he started to sense that it was vibrating. He felt that it was making a vibrational noise from in near the stomach. He took it and he had it x-rayed, and there was a ball bearing in it that they could see in the x-ray. Now, there was no hole in the mouth or anywhere for the ball bearing to get in. It was a solid rock, apparently millions of years old, that had been carved into a figurine. They extracted the ball bearing and found that it contained chromium, which is interesting because 17,000 years ago, we, of course, were not making chromium balls. In fact, chromium was first identified in 1761, isolated in the 1790s by modern man. And so that's an interesting piece. And that would date those back to as far as 17,000 years old.
That's incredible. That makes it some of the oldest artifacts ever found, right?
That would render them amongst the oldest artifacts ever found. And there are those who would contend that they are older by tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years old.
Do you have a theory behind the chromium?
Well, the theories are twofold. One is that long ago, mankind did have advanced civilizations which were in that area. There are those who believe that Atlantis was off the coast of West Africa. There are also those who believe that, or contend that, and this includes some chiefs, from my understanding, that before the Egyptian Empire rose in the pyramids, that was actually a satellite of West Africa, and that there were large pyramids which were long ago absorbed into the bush, into the jungle, and that those pyramids predated the Egyptians by long before. And the blue sky stones lend some question to the possibility of that. And so, of course, the other concept, as the Ancient Aliens television show, which you saw just appeared on, is that there were aliens which influenced that and provided that stone with that ball in it, perhaps for the purpose of us finding it now and asking these questions.
Hey, Ben, can you describe what the stones look like and maybe what they're made out of?
Yes, they're made out of soapstone. Some are made out of granite. Some are made out of sedimentary sandstone, and some may be made out of meteoric material. And the look of them is stylized, they would say, and some are not highly defined. But there are a wide variety, which is the interesting thing about the collecting of them, that I have over the years collected a wide variety of samples, of examples, of specimens, or of artifacts, if you will. They range from the images of the Nomoli gods with the protruding eyes and the large lips and squatty legs, such as this stone right here. You'll see the short squatty legs. You'll see the large protruding eyes and lips. Now, this particular one has some other qualities which we can get back to later, which are very interesting. So you'll have them that look like Nomoli gods, and then you will have the other end of the spectrum, which I will use here, one that has been identified as the Divine Mother Spirit, if you will. And these are humanistic, completely humanistic. So the other side of the spectrum, a woman nurturing a child. And again, this would be utilized as protection for a mother and for children, not only an individual, but this is large enough it could be at the center of the village. And they would do ceremonies and rituals to ask for the gods to protect the children and the mothers. But also many of these have messages, and the messages for the civilization to recognize the importance of protecting women, mothers and children, and the reverence that they should have for mothers and children as a society. So those would be more, again, humanistic would be more indicative of what you want people to focus on. Then other ones, this here, again, would be two Nomoli figures. And you'll see they have, again, the very squatty legs and the oversized eyes and mouth. And everything in between. We've got this one. One of the reasons why Thor Heyerdahl stated that they resembled the stones from Easter Island was that they had holes in the heads. And normally you do have holes in some of the heads, and they are specifically for the introduction of a liquid ointment or some type of a magical solution that they would use in the original ceremonies that would purportedly influence and have an effect on the entire tribal experience. And you'll see here, this one has a hole in his head. Now this one is a combination. It also tells a message. This is a message, and the message of this one is considered, when you'll see this is repeated in other artifacts. And the message is, the wise man need not listen to the fool. Or often translated as, the wise man need not hear everything. So you'll see that his ears are covered, but you'll also notice, of course, that there's a hole in the top of his head, as we identified. So that the other theory is that the concept is that you close off the hearing, if you will, and you receive the message from the higher source down through the head into the being. And interesting, very well balanced. Some of these are very artistically creative. It's quite impressive. So that's a couple of what the images would look like. And then there are, I should mention some, which are two other categories I should mention. One are the Mahanyade, which are the chief's spirit, if you will. And those would be often, again, this one, a configuration that would include an image of on this one, the crocodile, you'll see on the back coming up to the head. And the crocodile represents the Nomoli. It represents attributes that the Nomoli possess. And by infusing that into this chief stone, what they're doing there is they're having a combination of the attributes, again, of the gods, the Nomoli gods, being instilled into the chief. Because as in many cultures, of course, the people believed that their chief was more connected to the gods, and that he was connected to the gods, that they would be blessed and prosperous. And if he was not, then he's not that good of a chief. So they would look for, when they did the ceremonies, the purpose of the ceremonies and skinment, if they were, is one of the terms they use, is to go through the process of installing and instilling into the chief those powers of the Nomoli. And then the final one I should mention is we have a few over the years that we've gathered, without identifying at the time necessarily that would be this connection, but that fit that are similar to other stones you see from around the world that are identified as being potentially of ancient alien influence. That is primarily because of the elongated heads. So if you'll see this one, he does have an elongated head. He actually looks a little bit like he might have a helmet on too. So there are a few examples of those with the elongated heads. And again, he's got these short, squatty Nomoli legs. Somewhat, they're a little bit longer than usual, but so he could be a cross between a human and a Nomoli. And again, this one has a bit of a elongated head.
Did the people in the area do elongated heads, like the wraps?
No, there's no knowledge that I have of any elongated heads or wraps in that area.
How were they used in tribal rituals?
Let's take an example of the chief stone. We have one chief stone that was very large and has a crocodile on the front and the back. You'll see it on the website. It's the primary stone on the homepage. And a stone like that would have been set up for some elongated period of time prior to a new chief being indoctrinated or skinned. And the tribal members of the civilization will come and line in a procession. It could be 10,000 of individuals would come and touch that stone. Then they would bless it and they would ask for blessings from it. Then when the chief was indoctrinated, that particular skin, that stone also has a hole in his head, and the magical solution would have put into it. It would have been mounted. That one has a a hole in the bottom that would have fit into a protrusion on top of an altar. It would have been set on the altar, on the shrine, they would call them there, as opposed to altars, they would use the term shrine, and would be the centerpiece of that ceremony of the chief being indoctrinated. And these, again, some of these chiefdoms would include hundreds of thousands throughout history of individuals. Now, if you were to take such a stone as a male, we have some, not a lot, but there are some examples of male fertility stones. They would be used individually if they were the smaller ones. The larger ones, like the one that remains at the museum at this time, would be utilized again in the center of the village on a shrine. And any men who are having difficulties bearing children or having difficulties in that area would come, and there would be a series of rituals. There would be libations on the stone. There would be music. There would be drums, and there would be the raising of the power for them. Now, others are used by shamans and medicine women specifically, and not by the individuals.
What's the connection with the Dogon people?
Over the last couple of years, my son Quinn and I have been researching the Nomoli, and in that research, we looked into the Mali Empire, and we looked into the Dogon tribe, and we came to find that the Dogon were visited by a whirling ship of thunder, and that ship came down from Sirius, as you may know, and that it imparted knowledge to them of the origin of mankind. That ship, the beings which came on that ship were called the Nomos. So we began to look into the concept and found there was some linguistic support that the possibility of the fact that they would have initially been called the Nomos of Mali, and then inevitably, because the Mali Empire did include Sierra Leone and Liberia and Guinea. In fact, the Dogon originated at the juncture of Mali, Sierra Leone, and Guinea. So the Nomoli could well be the linguistic derivative of the Nomos of Mali. Also, the Nomos were amphibious beings. And as we just identified with that previous figurine we looked at, the Nomoli are associated with the crocodile, because as the natives would say, they can live in the water and on the land, i.e. amphibious. So that the gods are right conjoined to each other. There was also, we looked and we found a book some point in time ago that identified that there were Nomoli found 600 miles into the Dogon territory, and other similarities which connected the Dogon to the Nomoli.
Are you familiar? Are there any like USO, like underwater UFO reports in that area?
I'm not aware of any specifically, although I do understand there is a high level of UFO activity in West Africa. I do know that from the connections I have in the bush, that the chiefs and the people deep in the bush believe that there are, and that they were visited by beings from other parts of the universe, and that they continue to visit. In fact, they would think we're kind of silly not to know that.
So it's kind of a regular thing for them?
I think that, they're not surprised when they see things like that, because they have passed the stories down generationally throughout history. They don't doubt that the Nomoli gods visited their ancestors. They just accept it as a fact.
So can we go back to the sky stones? What is the connection with the Nomoli stones and the sky stones?
Well, the other thing that Angelo Pettoni did that was kind of interesting is he was looking for diamonds. And as part of that, he was smart enough to say to the chiefs, he said, listen, the history is, your tradition says that the gods turned to stone, the Nomoli, and their entire part of the universe turned to stone. They're part of the heavens, as they say. And the stars in that part of the heavens, when they fell to earth, they were diamonds. That's what the natives believe. And that's why Nomoli are found near diamonds. So Angelo Pettoni says to the chiefs, he says, well, if the sky turned to stone and fell down with a Nomoli, then you certainly must know where it fell. Trying to kind of get the chief to give him a hint on where some diamonds might be. And the chief says, well, yeah, we know where it fell. And we can't take you to it, but the shaman can take you to it. So Angelo hooked up with the shaman. He took him to the blue sky stones. He took them to the place, and they found the blue sky stones, which the natives identified as part of the heavens that fell with Nomoli gods. And he found them on the surface, and he found them below the surface, a couple 100 kilos of sky stones. Interestingly, assembled by a man in the shape of a pyramid, which is very interesting in that theories that pyramids existed in West Africa first. That certainly lends some thought to that. The interesting thing that follows that is they're blue and they're unlike anything. So we had him, a gentleman by the name of Klaus Donner, has been around for decades, still around. He's an expert in what's called items out of time. And Klaus Donner sent them to laboratories in Vienna and Austria, and they evaluated them, and they were only able to come back with the findings that 77% of is oxygen, and that they cannot identify the blue. The blue is not anything that they have seen or been able to identify. It is possible that it came from space, but no one can say. And they've never been found. Nothing like that has been found anywhere else in the world.
Tell us what's most fascinating to you about the stones.
The most fascinating thing is twofold. One, the fact that they are so unknown, and a guy like me happened to find them and is telling everybody about them. That's pretty interesting. But the more significant thing is that they have, in my opinion, and opinions of others, power with them that is here and that has been oppressed and suppressed for political, religious, social, and other reasons for a long time. And they have blessings to give to people today, and that we can be part of activating them and putting them into the hands of shamans and healers and paranormal, and even the scientific community to evaluate, is there a measurable, discernible reading that you can tell when they are introduced into someone's healing practice or into any other form of new to developing science, etc. So that's fascinating to me. What's going to happen next, if you will? And we've already witnessed what happens, the profound impact that they can have on people's lives. So very interesting to see how that translates on film. That's the next stage, to be part of that, taking something new in, putting it in, activating it, and capturing on film what occurs.
Are you working on doing that?
Yes. And we've already, when I did the Ancient Aliens television program, they asked me, they said, are there any, to this end, they said, are there any pictures of Nomoli in the bush? And I said, no, I don't think so. And are there any videos? I said, no, I don't think so. And I said, well, you know what, we should probably get some. And it would be virtually impossible for the television production world, Hollywood, to get in there. We have connections which are very unusual. It's a very dangerous, treacherous place. And the ruling religious powers will commit violent acts on those who practice and even have in their possession these traditional artifacts. So, but we were able to, and we negotiated. Initially, we were just going to send our man in, and he was going to get the contacts and meet with them, and no camera, because they're very nervous about cameras in the bush. But we were able to negotiate where he could take a cell phone in, and he was welcomed in. And when he got in the bush, he was able to capture on film the first ever shaman and the village using a stone in the ceremony. And so that was exciting. And And we are in communication now with those in the television business and production business on a couple different potential dynamics of how the show could unfold. But yes, we're working on a television show and eventually, I believe, a full-length feature film to show the stones, the powerful stones, and the story of the stones.
Is there only one with chromium?
Yes, that I know of.
Is that the one that was in strata that's 17,000 years old?
Yes.
Just crazy.
So how many
Yes.
different people are there with these stones?
How many people have stones?
Yeah.
Well, there are, again, many fakes out there, many relics or other replicas. There are, I don't know how many people have the stones, but I know, again, they've been collected since the 1850s, and likely some Portuguese sailors collected them in the 1400s. So I would anticipate there are hundreds of people with original stones in their possession, and your viewers may have one that they don't even know what it is. Or they may find one at the local flea market because obviously no one knows what they are. So they would not be identified properly.
It's pretty wild. And you said that the tribes are still using them?
It varies. Closer to the cities, you'll get, from my opinion, from my knowledge, you'll find more Muslimization, and the Muslimization has gotten more powerful. And it's a radical Muslimization. It's not the Muslims that would be more accepting and loving of others. These are the radical Muslims who are very violent towards anything, beliefs that are not with theirs. So you would have everything from the complete Muslim control, if you will, to in the bush. When you get out further, you're going to kind of like halfway. You know, they're still practicing the old, but they're practicing the new. And in fact, some stones have become available over the years because it's the last time that they're essentially permitted to use them, because the Muslims eventually push them out. They tolerate it because, of course, you can't just change that quickly people's beliefs, but they're pushed as far as they can. So when you get the answer to your question is deep, deep in the bush, yes, there are those who have been untouched and would still utilize the stones.
Awesome. Can we talk a little bit about the connection to Sirius B?
Yes, and that's with the Nomos from the Dogon. The interesting thing was that they apparently have been practicing rituals on a cycle which is consistent with the star, and they identified long ago that there was a Sirius B. In fact, they identified that there's a Sirius C ghost star that no one has proven yet, but since 1995, due to perturbations in the ellipse of the other two, there is conjecture that there could be, in fact, a Sirius C. So that the interesting thing about the Dogon, which has the entire world buzzing, rightfully so, is that they were able to identify a star long before science. They believe, and they were told, that mankind, at least their descendants, originated on the third planet off of Sirius C. So very interesting, and they, again, long ago separated themselves so that they live independently, and they continued themselves to be the ongoing conduit between the Nomos and mankind. We've taken them to shows as part of that, finding out who might know about them, and we were amazed. Even we went to the Gem Show outside of New York, and for 3 days, with people who are very well versed in every different stone in the world, we found not one person that's ever seen Nomoli stones. We took them even to MUFON International Show, which we were sure that people who have spent their entire lives in the UFO area would be aware of these stones, and we found again, not one person. Even Bill Burns, who had started the show UFO Hunters years ago, when I dragged him over to the booth, said he had never seen or nor heard of Nomoli stones. But at those shows, what was interesting, we talked about how old they were. There were people that I call stone whisperers, who came up and would put the stones in their hands, psychics, and those who do past life, and other types of things that don't have a lot of experience with, but I was very impressed with what happened when they put the stones in their hands. And those individuals identified that they thought the stones could be tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years old. And there was a healing at the MUFON show. A gentleman came up who was very lethargic. He had a neurological issue, and he was with two lady friends, and they asked if they could use one of the stones for healing. And I let them do that, and they sat in the back, and it was amazing. You could just feel something going on there. I don't know what it was, but something was going on, and when he got up and he came out, he was altogether different. His eyes were brighter. He was moving by himself. He was not lethargic. He came by 3 times and said that he had experienced a miracle, and he had had a healing from that stone. So very interesting dynamics there as far as the unknown nature of the stones. It's beautiful. Now that gives us an opportunity, people like you, to be the ones, though, to take them out there and reactivate them and introduce people to them. And part of this is that there was long ago, and still to a certain extent, we know, a fear of anything that's unknown. And certainly Africa, more so than others, has been tried to darkened by those who were frightened by things they did not understand. So it's great to be able to share a blessing that comes out of obscurity.
I found that when I try to look things up from ancient aliens to try to debunk them and see what the mainstream says, usually the mainstream just ignores it, doesn't say anything about it. And it was the same with these. There was hardly anything online about it.
Well, there was one organization that looks at all the ancient alien shows. I don't remember, it was online, and they did contact us, and I got back to them and said, "Hey, we would love you guys." They debunk the ancient alien stuff. I said, "We'd love you guys to look at the Nomoli and see what you find." They got back. They said, "We'd be interested in looking at it. We'll check it out." And that was the last I heard from them. So I guess they decided not to try to debunk, because hey, I'm open to anything. I don't, I'm not claiming that I'm a see-all, know-all. We're just pushing forward the information that we have uncovered through our research and what we've experienced by having collected the stones over the years.
It's wild to me that there's tribes that have stories about this stuff, and they tell you where this stuff comes from.
And they're like, hey.
Stories. And then everybody wonders, where does this stuff come from? And nobody even listen to the people that have them and have had them for thousands of years.
Are you going on the road with them at all?
Well, we are, available to go on the road for special events, and we offered to go to the Alien Con, but they at the last minute decided that they didn't invite us out.
Yeah, maybe the next one.
I think maybe the next one, or maybe the contact in the desert or somewhere, wherever.
Yeah, I think that would be good to get them out there so that people can see them. So, like, say somebody finds out they might have one in their house or one passed down, what should they do? Should they, contact you? I mean, are you kind of the way to go?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it took me quite some time to find anybody who knew anything about them. And as far as the expert who authenticated ours, is Professor Kwaku Aforianza, who's a retired art professor from Howard University in Washington, D.C., and was born in Ghana. They could certainly contact me, and I could give them some information on Nomoli. I'm not qualified to look at a stone on a Zoom or something and decide if it's authenticated. I wouldn't want to go online or put myself as being capable of that. But if they have one, I would certainly hold on to it and treat it with reverence. And if they are of the, some would say that a stone finds its owner. And if they have a stone such as that, maybe they're destined to recognize that it has more of value than they previously recognized. And if they're in some type of a work which involves the light and love and powerful, positive influence, they might want to plug it in and see why they have such a stone in their possession without knowing it.
Is there anything else you'd like to say about them?
Well, we do have some stones we're making available, and we're interested in tracking the results of the application in the different fields, those who are the leaders in their fields. So look forward to that, and really appreciate you guys putting it out there. I mean, this is great.
We're so thankful for you to show off your collection. That was really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really cool.
The website, ancientalienstones.com, I almost forgot to say. So if they wanted to review some further information, they've got some more stuff about the Thor Heyerdahl. We've got a little piece from the Ancient Aliens television show, and pictures of the stones, which we're making available right now from the collection.
I want to thank Ben so much for joining us, and thank you so much for sharing the Nomoli stones with us. And if you want to find Ben, where can they find you, Ben?
ancientalienstones.com.
Oh, thank you so much, and stay strange.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, Jess, and Eric, and Strange Tales.